You've got to tune to the Jupiter Joe Money Show. We're in the studio today with Jupiter Joe Thomas, Jenny Thomas. I'm Dana Thomas, and today we have a very special guest, Dan Shube. Welcome, Dan.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
Absolutely. So Dan and I have become quick friends over the last 2 years. Is it 2 years?
About 3 years, actually.
Is it 3 years?
Yeah, time. The older we get, the faster time goes.
It goes too fast. Exactly. And the funniest thing in the world is that I can't remember if you reached out to me originally by email. I didn't know Dan. Right, 3 years ago. And I think he reached out to me by email.
I sent you an email and you promptly ignored me.
Well, it's funny. You get, when you're in this business, you get some people that you think are trying to sell you something.
Yes.
Right? Or trying to get something.
Well, it was my fault because I wrote to you and I said, listen, I was listening to your show and I was really interested in it because I happen to also do a radio show too.
Right.
And I'd love to talk to you.
Right.
And you thought that I was, trying to recruit sponsors for my show, which
Yeah.
I wasn't. I was looking for retirement advice from you.
Exactly.
So I wrote back a second time. I was persistent because I knew how important it was to have somebody in my corner to help me with my retirement. And then it was like, oh, okay, I didn't know. And then we started talking, and that's when it really got interesting.
So tell me about, first of all, let's go back. Let's talk about your radio show because you do the golf and travel show.
I was doing the golf and travel show for over 20 years. It started down in the Fort Lauderdale area. I was actually for many years on one of the channels that your show is on.
Right.
And after many years, I moved the show up to Palm Beach County, further north. And for, I guess, about 4 or 5 years, I was on another station that plays oldies type music. And it was wonderful. And you were, decided to become a sponsor, which was great. It was helpful for me. And it was a great run, but unfortunately, the economics recently, the prices went up significantly. And, once you start retiring, sometimes you just can't stop. Retired from my day job about 3 years ago. And so I retired from that show a couple of weeks ago, I guess. And now I really have nothing to do. So I'm so glad that you found something to keep me out of trouble here today.
So this is funny, but we had a meeting with Dan and his wife, Ruth. You don't mind me mentioning Ruth. And we found so much in common. So I went to CW Post, Long Island University, and so did Dan and Ruth around the same time.
Both of you guys did.
Oh, yes. Wow. Yeah. I was a couple of years ahead of you. So, of course, doing your job like you do so well, you need to find out about your clients and their lifestyle and what they do and what they spend money on and stuff. So you ask a few questions. Yeah. And so I said, I went to CW Post. Well, first I said I lived on Long Island. And you said, well, so did I.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, I went to CW Post College. And you said, so did I. Yeah. And then I said, well, as it turns out, I met my wife there. And you said, so did I. And then I said, well, I think you said, well, what dorm did you live in? I said, I lived in Riggs Hall. And you said, so did I.
Yeah.
I said, until I got thrown out for misbehaving. And you said, so did I.
It was so similar. It was ridiculous stories. We could have wrote a book,
It was just absolutely ridiculous. So, and we both were business majors. Yeah. I focused on marketing and you focused more on finance, I guess.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite as good at finance as you were. And, early in my career, like most people, I was foolish. I didn't know about saving for retirement. Things like 401ks were not popular back in the ancient days when we started our careers. And eventually I ended up doing marketing in the banking industry, first at a regional bank in Okeechobee. And I actually started teaching financial literacy to some of the kids at Okeechobee High School.
Wow.
So, even though I was a marketer and not that financially savvy, I knew enough and started to teach kids, about checking accounts and credit cards and credit card debt and saving for retirement and things like that. And all of a sudden I became kind of an expert, but not really, but smart enough to know what I need to do. Not necessarily smart enough to teach adults like you do, but to teach kids at least. And I started saving for retirement then, but that was, a good 20 years into my career. So lucky for me, it wasn't too late. And I managed to accumulate enough that now in retirement, I can survive. But the good news is my kids, I was able to teach them so that they started saving their first jobs, out of college. So thank goodness they were smart enough to listen. Kids don't listen to their parents too often.
Right.
But, being smart with your retirement investing is a wonderful thing, but you do have to have something to invest.
Right. True.
So I think, the best advice I could give anybody is to start now, whether you're 21 years old or 40 years old, start now if you
even
haven't.
60.
Or even 60 years old, because, your life will be significantly better. And the other thing is, I was a friend of mine called me actually last night. I'm heading to the PGA golf show in a few days, and he's an old friend. He was the head of marketing for Tour Edge Golf for many, many years. And he left them like 20, 30 years ago, and he's jumped around to a few different jobs, and he's not happy with his job. He's 59 years old, and he was asking me for some career advice. And I said to him, with the economy the way it is, changing jobs or trying to change jobs at your age, not so easy. I said, hang in there, throw as much money as you can into your retirement, because I retired about 5 years earlier than I had hoped or planned to.
I remember that.
And luckily, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But I would say at least half the people who are in the working world, if not more, end up retiring at a younger age than they anticipate. So they don't save as long as they hope, and they start pulling sooner than they thought.
And you had to retire, so to speak.
Yes and no. I didn't have to.
But
what happened was I had a wonderful boss at my last job for like 16 years. And he decided to semi-retire and name somebody else to kind of replace him.
Right.
And I was not happy at all. And when you work for a wonderful boss for 16 years and then all of a sudden that changes, I was miserable.
You don't want to work anymore.
No, I did not. So luckily, I looked at my numbers, and I was already, talking to you at that time. And you said, hey, you can retire if you want. And, I was like getting upset stomachs and chest pains from the stress and being miserable. And I said, all right, I'm going to jump into it. And that was a little over 2.5 years ago.
Well, and what's interesting? I mean, I remember every conversation like you do. You have a great memory. And I remember talking to you and Ruth. And I remember stories, and just without even looking at my notes, just how you and Ruth have said, we haven't done well with other advisors. We've gotten so much bad advice,
God,
right? Yes.
I mean, well, first of all, going way, way, way back, I'm the kind of guy that I must have a face that people come to me and they bring me tips, like stock, whether it's a horse tip at the racetrack or a stock tip at the stock market.
Right.
If I buy any stock on my own, my advice to anybody listening is to short sell that stock, because it will always go down if I buy it. No matter what it's a short thing.
You're not the only one, though. There's a lot of people like that.
So my whole life, I've tried and tried. Eventually I came to the conclusion that picking stocks is just not my thing.
Right.
So I became a conservative investor. And my wife...
You didn't want to lose any money.
I didn't want to lose money. And my wife is even more conservative than I am.
She's like my wife, Lynn.
Right, which is typical, I think. Usually the wives are typically more conservative than the husbands.
Yes.
But that's really what brought me to you, because, when I heard you on the radio, you were talking about investments that can go up but can't go down.
Right.
And to me, that was like such an eye-opener. It's like, what? There are investments that won't go down? I never found any of those. So, another thing, my wife has a cousin, and his whole life he was in the teaching profession.
Okay.
And teachers, we all know, do not get paid very well.
Right.
But they do it because they love kids and teaching kids, right? It's their passion. Well, he went on to be like a principal or a headmaster at a private school, and his earnings got a little bit better, and he retired young. Mm-hmm. And why did he retire young? Because slow and steady.
Right.
He made a decent salary every year. He didn't do crazy things. He invested it wisely.
Yeah.
And he is now living a wonderful life in retirement. So being conservative is not always a bad thing.
Dan, I have clients who have made $30,000 and $40,000 in the old days, and they have retired with millions of dollars because they just saved and scrimped and saved and put the money away. And honestly, you have to just bite the bullet and say, I remember Dave Ramsey, you've heard him.
Oh, yeah. I used to listen to him quite a bit.
Yeah. And he used to say, eat beans and rice,
Yes.
And what he's talking about is not eating beans and rice.
Live within your means.
But just, don't overspend. And we were talking about how cars now, a new car's costing $1,000 a month. It's insane.
It is. It's what a mortgage payment for a house used to be instead of your car payment.
Go ahead, Dean. I think we want to take a break really quick.
You've got it tuned to the Jupiter Joe Money Show. If you would like to find out more about how to protect your money, make it last for your entire retirement, and get a 10% with 8.25% yearly growth in your income bucket, then go to jupiterjoe.com or call Jupiter Joe at 561-743-0999. It's free, and Joe always answers the phone.
Thank you, Dana. So we've got a lot to cover.
Yes.
So, one of the things I liked about you and Ruth was that you guys are realists when you came in. You didn't, a lot of people have this idea of retirement and I'm going to earn 10% a year, 8% a year. And you were realist. You said, Joe, what are we going to do? And I said, you're probably going to earn 6 or 7% a year, but you won't lose any money. And you can live off this money, live off the interest, and not necessarily touch principal. And we've tried to do that with yours. And I'm not getting into specifics. That's your business.
And it's okay. I mean, again, I'm surprised by the fact, and investing the past year or so has been good. Companies have made good profits. And
with what's going on.
And, quite frankly, I read a lot about finance, even though I'm no expert. And, you read about the 4% rule where you could take 4% out and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's only true if you're earning at least 4% or close to 4%.
Minus, you're minus and minus.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to run out of money. Yeah. And lucky for me, my investments are yielding significantly more than 4%. Yeah. And I can live on it. And my principal is continuing to either stay the same or actually get larger. So, my kids are salivating. I was planning to spend all of this money on, my life. And my kids are like, hey, is there anything left for us? And you know what? There may actually be something for the kids, which is nice.
Well, it's funny. We had our first meeting, and I will not forget you and Ruth were looking at me, and I said, this is what it earned. And you guys both looked at each other like, hey, we had a plus here, finally kind of thing, And look, annuities are kind of subjective too. Sometimes they have pluses. We're in an indexed annuity with Dan and Ruth, and sometimes we'll go income annuity, which we've transitioned some of your money into that as well, where you're getting the bonus of 10%, 8.25%. We know we're going to turn that onto income at some point when you need it. But what's interesting about Dan is that he's in charge of what I do for him. He'll call me and say, hey, Joe, we need money. We need this. We need that. You take the bull by the horns with me and say, hey, I need this or I need that. I don't tell you what to do, right?
Correct. And, even though I'm withdrawing a certain amount, every year, the way annuities work, you're only entitled to without a fee to withdraw a certain amount. So I take pretty much what they allow me, right, and then I see if I use it all. And if I don't use it all, I can reinvest it. Sometimes these annuities have bonuses if you throw some more money in. So I could always throw it back in, or I throw it into a CD that these days is earning 4 or 5% or so, which isn't so bad until I need to spend it. So my money is always working for me, earning something. And it's always secure, and it's never going to go down.
And Dan came to me with a unique situation, which is he didn't have a lot of time to retire, right?
Mm-hmm. A couple of years.
Yeah. And but you literally came to me and said, hey, we got to make this happen pretty quickly. And we rolled with it, and we did what we had to do. And I think what I learned from working with you is that I love the way you're in charge of your money. There's a difference. See, some people want to just put the burden on me, and that's fine. We do that for a lot of clients where they don't want to know about it. But you're proactive, and that's important.
Yeah, no, I like being involved as best I can, and it's all good. And I have to say though that besides the financial part, retirement brings a lot of uncertainty and a lot of worries to people. And myself and my wife, we're no different. We're not great at budgeting. We you would say to me, well, what do you spend in a month or in a year? And it's like, I have no idea. Yeah. And we're just not numbers people that are good at, sitting down and putting a balance sheet together and actually knowing what we're spending. So now 2.5, 3 years into retirement, I'm finally starting to figure out what it's costing me to live. Yeah. And, I'm finding out it's not that bad.
See, I tell people that all the time. You're not, when you retire, you're not going to know your tax bracket. You're not going to know what you really need for a couple of years.
Yes. And one positive now for me, which was a negative when I first retired, for better or worse, my income was relatively high. So my cost for Medicare, they double it. for 2 years. They have a 2-year look back where you have to pay twice as much. And I was
because
thinking,
you were making big money,
right? And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is terrible because now I'm making no money. My income is zero basically, and you're charging me this extra penalty. Well, you got to have, you suck it up for a couple of years, and finally that went away. So this January, I just got the new cost for my health insurance from the government, and it's half what it was. So I got all this money now all of a sudden.
How about taxes? What do you think about taxes? I know we were talking off mic that, your tax rate were really high when you were working.
Yes.
You're one of the few people that have controlled taxes in many respects in the last 2-3 years. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you have a high income, you pay a lot of tax. I was not a savvy investor where I was, putting money in offshore banks and things and trying to beat the government. I just paid what they told me to pay.
They told you to pay, yeah.
And it wasn't pleasant, but, my theory always was, well, if you're making a good income, you should be happy to pay taxes. I mean, that's what happens, know.
Right.
So now, of course, my tax bracket is going to be the lowest of all. And even with the standard deduction, they give you enough that surpasses your Social Security. So even if you're earning some money or withdrawing some money from your annuities, it's still pretty much tax-free, and unless you're withdrawing a huge amount.
Right.
And again, for me, I'm not sure what the lowest bracket is. It's maybe 12 or 15%. So I may end up paying hundreds or, one or 2,000 or something, but not, 20 or 30,000 or some crazy number that, you look at some of the millionaires that pay nothing and it's like, hey, buddy, this ain't right.
I know. And that's what's interesting about how we work together is that Dan will usually call me and say, and by the way, one of the things I wrote down on my notes here, and I remember now talking to you, now that we're talking about it, is that we always do an annual review. And Dan has several annuities that he does with us. And what we do is we do an annual review on each one of the different annuities to see how you're doing. Can we make it better? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I think that helps you and Ruth talk and figure out, hey, this is what we need this year. The what ifs. Mm-hmm. What if I need a roof? What if I need more insurance money? And this is for everybody. Everybody in our age bracket is doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I relate to it exactly like you guys do, and you specifically,
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And what's cool also about working with you is all of your expertise and your time. I never get a bill.
No.
I used to say that my second favorite 4-letter F word is free.
Golf's the other one, huh?
Yeah, golf is the other one, correct.
Especially if that's free, that's a good one.
Yeah, at least on the radio, that's what we could say. But yeah, I mean, kind of like, my radio show was the Golf and Travel Show, and I kind of can relate it to like a travel agent. You never pay a fee or typically you don't, to travel agents. They get a commission, from the people that they recommend. So if I were to go to an annuity company and buy an annuity, it wouldn't cost me any different amount whether I use you or don't use you. So your, the benefit of having your expertise costs absolutely nothing.
I appreciate that. And that's one thing people always come to my office and say, well, how much do I owe you now? And I say nothing. The insurance company pays us a commission. Mm-hmm. We can be fee-based. We could change our whole motto and say, hey, we're just going to, there are guys out there that just do fee-based planning for annuities. Mm-hmm. We've chosen not to do it. The company pays us out of their pocket instead of yours. Right. And guess what? That entitles you to my advice and expertise for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Now, look, I'm 64, and I love what I do, and I'm going to continue doing what we're doing. We're building our business with Jenny and Dana and my son.
You're building an empire.
I don't know about that, but we're trying. We're trying. Dana, do you want to take a break now and just let the people know who they're listening to right now?
You've got it tuned to the Jupiter Joe Money Show. A lot of great conversation here on retirement planning, starting now, safe investments, and getting a second opinion. If you want to protect your money, go to jupiterjoe.com or call Jupiter Joe at 561-743-0999. It's free, and you can get your second opinion now.
All right. So, Dan, we got Dan Shube, a client and absolute friend in the the show today. And I think one thing I want to talk about is that I do tend to make friends easily with people that I get to know. I figure if you're going to give me your money, I better be a friend of yours. So
right, it's a trust thing.
Exactly, absolutely. I mean, I take that to heart literally. I make sure that my clients know that I got skin in the game. I show you what I'm doing with my own money.
I was just going to say that it makes me much more comfortable. When you say, well, you could do this or do that, but I'm doing this. It's like, okay, if you're doing it, I'm in.
Yeah, and I actually show you my contracts that I have, the annuities, and one of the contracts we we had one annuity wasn't doing great. We didn't like the way it was performing, right? Mm-hmm. And we moved it to one that I had done the exact same thing with, and I explained to Dan how it worked. He got a 10% bonus. He got the 8.25%, and it's future income for you when you decide to pull that trigger. Mm-hmm. You know, the nice thing about this stuff, and as Jenny knows and Dan knows, is that you tell me when you want the income. It's not the other way around. If you go to a regular broker or advisor, they want to be in the driver's seat. They want to tell you what to do. Now, we can certainly do that. We don't. We want to interject with the client and say, how do you feel about this? Do you want more income? Do you want less income? How do you want to do it? And that's what you do, right?
Yeah, worse than that. I mean, I worked with a stock brokerage, one of the large companies. I won't mention their name, and very, very nice people. But the person I was dealing with, I did not get the feeling that she was giving me any advice. It was coming from some corporate headquarter place where they push out what they tell all their clients all over the country to do. And it's not personal. I mean, people are different and have different goals and needs and levels of comfort in their investing. And it, not only that, it didn't make any money. At all. And, they charged a huge fee. So after the fee, my account was getting smaller and smaller. And, I had other friends that recommended this broker to me, and they said they were doing okay. And maybe they were doing something different. But after a year or two of wasting time and wasting money, I said, this is not for me.
Well, one of the things that's happening with a lot of brokerages today, and it's a big issue. I can show you email after email and people who will call me and say, hey, Joe, I'm with X company. I won't even mention anybody. And they're charging me a lot of money. But more importantly, they're trying to get rid of me because I don't have $500,000.
Right.
I don't have $1 million. I only have one lady right now I'm working with. She's got about $150,000. And she says, all I want to do is keep my money safe. And this person put me right in the market. I'm losing money already. And they're telling me they want to get rid of me at the same time because they did it because a friend referred them
right.
there.
And even if they don't get rid of you, if that's their feeling, what kind of time or advice are they giving you if they really don't care about you?
Yeah. And look, we don't have a minimum set like that. We accept what you have, and usually we're about a $10,000 minimum. But we find that even like yourself, you started with one amount and then you started adding. And Joe, I have this 401k, I have this, and we move it over as we can, right?
Correct.
And you didn't pay any taxes when you moved your money, did you?
No.
We did the transfer for you.
Yes, it wasn't simple, but having you to help. I mean, like anything these days, things are complicated, and these insurance companies, they got a lot of paperwork, a lot of rules, and for the average person, it's a lot. But having an expert is important.
By the way, and this is how weird this situation goes between me and Dan and how we know each other. He happened to have a John Hancock pension.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about it for a minute because I said we were having trouble getting his money out, and I said, Dan, I used to work for John Hancock for 13 years, right?
Yep, and they still don't treat you well.
And I have an annuity with them for about $250,000 that me and Mom have, and they wouldn't let me take it, and they didn't want you to let you take it.
No.
We did get it, didn't we?
We did, and that's another point that I'd like to make. When I worked all those years, I had a 401k. It was managed by some company that manages it or whatever. The fees were quite high. Mm-hmm. The options for investing were minimal. And I really didn't make a heck of a lot of money. And back then, I just assumed that this is the way it is. And I come to find out from you that even if you're still working and haven't retired and have a 401k, it's possible to transfer that money out into something else where you can earn a lot more.
Yes. Me and Jenny talk about the carve out. Even if you don't want to move all of it, move some of it now.
Yeah.
Protect some of your money.
Yep.
How are we doing on time, Dana? We're doing okay?
Yeah, we have 3 minutes.
All right. We got 3 minutes to talk to Dan, and I'm sure Dan and I could take up 3 minutes very easily here.
Well, one thing I want to say is, and I don't know how all the listeners will feel about this, but, being that I was the host of the Golf and Travel Show for like 20 years. Besides my passion for playing golf, which we both share, I have a passion for travel. And being retired, I have time. And working with you, Joe, I have a little bit of money. So not only am I heading this coming week to the PGA Merchandise Show, the following week I have an interesting trip planned that most people don't get a chance to do.
Okay.
I am heading with a buddy to Havana.
Wow.
Exactly.
Cuba.
Yes.
As in Cuba.
Yes. That's the usual response, I guess. Like, oh my God, is it safe? Well, being that our government and our media are not fond of Cuba, they kind of skew belief to make it sound like it's the world's worst place and unsafe.
Yeah.
If you read about people who actually go there or live there, it's supposedly a wonderful place. So I am looking forward. I won't be playing golf, but I'm going to ride in some of those 1950 cars that they managed to keep on the road.
I was thinking about that instantly.
Yep, that's it. You don't want to. If you wait too long, they'll be gone one day. So I want to do that, and I'm going to take a trip into the area of the country where they have the tobacco plantations.
Right.
I'm going to roll my own cigar.
Okay. Well, you got to watch you rolling your own.
My own cigar, and I'm going to smoke it, and I'm going to ride a horse through a national park by the mountains and stuff. And just for a few days. Oh, and it's the Havana International Jazz Festival.
Wow.
So I'm also a music fan. I listen to this station. I mean, this is the music of my life. But I like a little jazz, too. And like the Buena Vista Social Club movie, you know, the Cuban jazz is a huge thing.
We could do another show on the music because in college, you also were in the music thing, and so was I.
My mother worked for the building that has the concert, so I used to get in for free. Yeah.
Wow.
So before you got there, it was the Dome, which collapsed under snow. I used to go there even in high school to all the concerts.
Bruce Springsteen.
I was there. I slapped hands with Bruce Springsteen when he recorded Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Was recorded at CW Post.
And by the way, that's the best version.
It is the best.
Ever.
I was in the front row, slapped hands with him.
Talking Heads. I went and seen a Talking Heads.
I saw Talking Heads as well. We were at the same shows all these years.
Time. We weren't old OGs now, right? They call old guys. We were young guys.
But unfortunately, all that music now resides at True Oldies.
We should do a show on just music one day. You know?
I love music. A couple of years ago, I saw Van Morrison in Vienna.
I love Van Morrison.
In Vienna, though. I mean, in a symphony hall. It was like, you know.
So you're living your life the way you want, aren't you?
I'm living the life the way I want.
Does Ruth go or she stays home?
She goes sometimes. She went to Europe, so she did go to see Van Morrison. Cool. She's not going to Havana. She's a conservative traveler as well as investor. So if it's too crazy, I have to find a buddy to do it with. But I'm living the life I want to relatively conservatively. My mother is 97 and still alive, so I don't want to outlive my money. But by the same token, I am enjoying life. And I encourage everybody to save as much as they can when they're working, get a good retirement advisors, to help you, and, enjoy life, because why not?
Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show. Yeah. Good.
Well, and thank you for having me, and thank you for advising me.
We're going to do it again.
I would not be so happy if not for you.
I appreciate that very much. Go ahead, Dana.
If you want to start your retirement planning now, go to jupiterjoe.com or call 561-743-0999. It's free. Get a consultation with Jupiter Joe Thomas and get your second opinion.
Thank you so much, Dan, again.
Thank you.